Hello and welcome to our third session on army and geopolitics. In the last session, Colonel Pandey, we had discussed how geopolitics is something that the army engages with, but it needs to be done in a more systematic way because, after all, which other institution in the country has such a pool of talent as the Indian Army does? And also the very fact that it the task of the army is to operate at the borders. It's not really committed to operating within the country. So therefore, we had built up this argument towards how we should be within the army mapping out what are called geopolitical codes. So in today's session, we will look at geopolitical codes and we will see how it is essential that the army as well as the academia they come together in the benefit of national interest to have a much larger canvas on geopolitics.
I'll just, I completely agree with Professor Sonali about our last session and how from the last session we will shift over to this session. In a very graduated manner, we are actually trying to build where exactly armed forces and geopolitics comes. And what Professor Sonali says is what is going to be actually focused more in today's session. A point where we need to really understand is armed forces and its role. When we say it has got nothing to do with internal, which means it is borders, at the borders, beyond the borders, you have to select one out of these two. As soon as you say at the borders, you are restricting the imagination, thinking, and employment of the armed forces right at the border. As soon as you say beyond the border, this means you are opening the entire geopolitical domain for use by the armed forces for an area where they actually are going to be operating. So, whether they operate at the border or much beyond is all that is about geopolitics. And that is what exactly Professor Sonali is focusing at. And today's session is about the geopolitical codes, which is her core subject. So when she talks about geopolitical codes, we know exactly where armed forces will use that. So I'll request you to take on from here.
yeah, thank you, Colonel Pandey. So, when we speak about geopolitical codes, a complex term, what is it that we really mean? If I need to put it in one sentence, I would say it is the way that a country would project its interests in the world. So, the core question with respect to India would be what are India's interests in the world? So, how does one really then, how does one decode interests in the world? So, one looks at statements of what a country wants to do, how you want to position yourself in the world, how does India want to position itself in the world, and then there has to be a systematic mapping of existing and potential threats as well as the feasible responses that the country gives to these factors. Also, we would be looking at, geopolitical codes are also defined as a very key content of geopolitical codes is strategic assumptions that the government makes about other states. So, what is it that the government is really doing? The government is systematically studying beyond the borders. I would also go along with you when you say at, there is a difference between at and beyond the borders. Yeah, the whole idea of geopolitics is to expand beyond the borders. So, what is the government doing? It is making it's making very data based pictures, snapshots of what other states are doing and what we have to do with respect to the picture that we have to show the world. So every time you look at America, there has to be a picture that has to be there, which we have developed about America. Every time you look at Germany, every time you look at UK, there should be very clear snapshots that come in the mind of policymakers as well as the armed forces as to what exactly are the projections of these key geographical spaces as far as their geopolitical codes are concerned. So, obviously, you're looking at places which are beyond your boundaries. You are trying to make a picture of the world. Having said that, and quickly in another 2 minutes, because I don't want to take your time, I will, discuss. I will just give you an example of what geopolitical codes are, how they work. The best way to look at geopolitical codes is to look at America and to look at how over a period of time, yeah, it is important to go into history because history is what we learn from for our present. So if we look at America, say somewhere around 1913, which is the time of the First World War, we see a couple of things. We see a that till 1913 America was relatively isolationist. Come the two world wars and America breaks out of this isolation. It plays a key role. It is a game changer in the two world wars. So a geopolitical code which could be identified as isolationist turns into something different. I wouldn't say interventionist, but through its intervention into the two world wars, its view of the world starts expanding. Over the next few centuries, what it does is, when we come down to the Second World War, at the end of the Second World War, 1945, by that time the geopolitical code of America changes to hegemonic. It starts looking at itself as a world leader, not hegemonic right in 1945, but from 1945 to 1990 we see this development of America as a hegemon, and the picture of itself that it is giving the world, and it has created that picture for itself, is that of a upholder of democracy in the world. So everything, including its Gulf War, its entire code on weapons of mass destruction, the WMD was a geopolitical code. So you look at what is happening in the Gulf in the 90s. So you see that the code that America is consistently giving is that of a world leader plus a hegemon. It's very clear. And all their actions therein are focused on its mapping of its allies, mapping of its threats, mapping of its potential threats. In a sense, aren't we asking the same question now after America has withdrawn from Afghanistan? The question that is being asked is, oh, where is the world leader? Where is the hegemon? So obviously, at this point of time, we need to study how there are changes happening in America's geopolitical code. Having said that, similar, you can see it will take a huge time to actually decode Germany's geopolitical codes and Britain's geopolitical codes, and which is the task I think which the academia and the army should be doing. The obvious relevant question is, where does the military come in? I said this before in my earlier episodes, I'll say it again, that if you look at America, in America, you see the academia and the military and policymakers working step to step. So, if you are talking about the American geopolitical code during the Cold War, which was containment, containment was a code which arose from American academia. We had George Kennan, giving us the idea of containment, which was taken up, implemented by the government as well as the military. It was a complete coordination, a complete coordination between the academia, policymakers, and the army. So this is where I see the military coming in, and I would be opening this to you to see how the military would be coming in here. What are your thoughts on that? Quickly, in 30 seconds, I will again recount what are the contents of a geopolitical code. So you map out your current allies. So you tell us in the next, few minutes, in the next couple of, phases of this interaction, how India has mapped out its current allies, current enemies, potential enemies, what it has done in maintaining these allies, in countering these allies, enemies, and do we have a concept of, do we have an idea of threat which the army has decoded, the army has constructed? And you could probably take us through the past 75 years here.
Yeah, Sonali. See, so beautifully, Sonali has put the American example of the geopolitical codes. If I would say, how exactly is the elbow space America started with, how it kept on increasing its space in the world politics, and how it kept on occupying more and more using different weapons the state has. You take that as an example, and we talk about where does Indian military come in whenever we say army in all these five episodes, even the future. So always read that as armed forces. We actually mean armed forces. Even I at times I say army, but understand that we are talking about the armed forces. Whenever we talk about a nation and its strategic reach in terms of its mind thoughts, in terms of its policies, whether they are trade or finance, in terms of policies, whether it is in terms of allies, help, or whatever you have, there is something that you do not want the world to let know as to where exactly are you leading your country. This, in turn, is actually the geopolitical code that you are writing for yourself, deciding for yourself. So, we are talking about a much, much higher level of thinking within a country. Where does the forces, they where do they come in as far as we are concerned? First thing that we have to understand, accept, and accept it without any hesitation, is that we do not have the culture of strategic thinking in our armed forces. The culture simply does not exist. The culture is of the immediate operations, a SAN model, a target, something beyond the target. As soon as you go one level up to the division, one more target. And the farther the target goes, the lesser the information available, the lesser the discussion at the ground level, the lesser the impact of achieving or reaching a particular target on the entire geopolitics. We don't have that culture. So, first and foremost, we have to accept the fact that we don't have this culture. So, when you don't have this sort of a culture at the ground level, how are we expecting the nation to have a geopolitical code where army is also tailored in? For the army to be tailored in this geopolitics, it has to be as a culture. It cannot happen that soon as a person starts putting on stars on his collar or a vehicle, that he suddenly gets a geopolitical intelligence. No, it does not happen that way. It has to happen as a formal education, something that you have organically grown up with, which is not happening. So, this is the first thing that we have to accept. Strategy in armed forces suddenly becomes a domain of a brigadier and above. So, from where does this person overnight acquire this knowledge which he has been denied for the first 2.5 decades, nearly 2 decades plus? Acceptance of the fact that we do not have this culture, I think, is going to be the first and the biggest challenge to face before we even come to anywhere close to what Professor Sonali is suggesting. And when she talks about what are the contents of these codes, now look at certain things that I will now tell you. When we talk about geopolitical codes, we are talking about the contents. We are talking about the current allies. It's not a theoretical question. We are in the 75th year of independence. I will divide this into just three straight away mathematical: 25 years, 25 years, 25 years. So 1972 is the 25th year. What have we seen? Non aligned movement, China war, one war with Pakistan, second war with Pakistan. This is what we have seen. Where exactly has been military in these 25 years? It has been nowhere. You have taken part in a war because you were ordered to. 1971, God gave you India an opportunity to have a two front war. But we did not accept China even as an enemy. This is 2021. So we don't have this concept of two front war. So today, in every press, every coverage, every general talks about two front war, when including the CDS has never spoken about two front war in his entire service. So this is not something against the CDS or against the current. This is the culture I am talking of. From the base, we do not have this culture, and suddenly, because Galwan has taken place, so everyone now talks about two front war. Now, when you are talking about two front war, do we even realize that the war actually has come to hinterland? We are beyond two front war. The third front is right inside the hinterland. You do not know where the threat is going to come from. So, what we are current allies when we talk, did we know who our allies were up to 1972? Did we use that information to shape our next 25 years up to 1997 to see whether all these current allies were actually our allies or not? What has happened thereafter up to 2021? Who are our allies? Today, we should be talking about who should be our allies in the next 25 years. We are talking about 2046. So, we should be actually shaping that. Where exactly is military? So, military today, I see military as someone who runs on the platform on a speeding train wanting to catch today and misses the last bogie, and then you wait for the next train. No, that's not how the geopolitical codes are going to be written. We talk about potential allies. When we are talking about current allies today, we also have to be seeing our potential allies. Look at China. The encirclement of India, some a theory which I have been so strongly supporting from the last almost about 22, 23 years, which is a reality today. You look at China, the way it has actually cultivated every country around us in Africa, in Central Asia, and also in South Asia. So, aren't we learning something from there that that country is actually planning to do something? They are actually writing their geopolitical codes, and the PLA is shoulder to shoulder when it comes to that. We talk about current enemies. Current enemies today are not permanent enemies, neither they were enemies earlier. So could we have converted them into our potential allies in past? Is it possible to do it in future? International relation is all about today and tomorrow. It has got nothing to do with past. Maintaining allies. Are we talking about maintaining allies? What exactly are our relations with Pakistan, Nepal, Bhutan, Bangladesh, Myanmar, Sri Lanka? So we are talking about maintaining allies. These are the countries on which we should have been, they should have been, are actually the vanguard, a buffer zone for the country. The buffer zone for the country has vanished, and their borders today have become a threat to our national security. So when we are talking about geopolitical code at the political level, at the foreign ministry level, at the level of military, at the level of academic field of this country, there is absolutely no synergy. Today, the academicians who are specialists in this field, why shouldn't there be a common portal for international relations or political science of all the universities put together at one place under one banner, where these common topics are raised, and you have the intellect of the youth, of the professors, of the PhDs, of everyone coming at one place? Why can't this be used as a curriculum for the military right from the 0 year of service. Why can't this become the curriculum for zero for the foreign ministry? And thereafter, you come for politicians. I don't know from where these politicians get their intelligence from. And suddenly there is a man who has only and only been stone pelting all his life. He wins an election and he becomes a foreign minister and he talks about foreign affairs. No, this culture is not there in us. And this is what precisely I say that geopolitical codes, this is the place where we are lacking. So I have covered not only the geopolitical codes, I have also covered how exactly we are, and this mismatch of all these four main streams, which actually should be synergized to bring about a total change in the way we think about our future, our next 25 years of writing geopolitical codes cannot be possible if we all don't get together, right?
Yeah.
Uh, I will just ask you one thing. Since we are a democracy, how exactly are all these things seen by you?
Yeah, that's a very pertinent question. I would have come to that. The point is, see, when we compare with China, we are comparing with the CCP and the PLA, which I would much rather compare with a democracy like America. So, what I am looking at is how, a democracy has to justify every action of its to its people, not only because in a democracy, public opinion is extremely important. We have a vibrant and a free press, and every action of ours, be it Galwan, be it the action we took in Doklam, or be it what happened after Pulwama, we are all taking it to the public, and our geopolitical codes would evolve in a democratic setup. The government would, at every step, have to justify, not in the sense of justify, but at least take it to the public. Having said that, I will also say that, yeah, what you actually, I'm winding up the session. What you said it brilliantly, that we need to be at the cutting edge. Actually, we need to be at this point of time planning for the next 20 years. And yes, despite the fact that there is a critical gap there, I'm an eternal optimist, and I would say that, one would look at a greater synergy between the academia, in the sense that you have identified it, and the army and policymakers. And I would say amen to this wish that, this kind of synergy happens. And we are actually moving towards an understanding of theaterization, which I think we will take up in our next episode.
Yeah, that is summing up this particular session, episode 3. We go on to episode 4 from here, and like Professor Sonali said, this is going to be for theaterization. So, very slowly from armed forces to geopolitics, how we are coming to the theaterization as a topic. It is so that all the people who are watching this, they actually understand the need of the hour today is actually to have a synergy at the national level. Thank you so much, and thank you so much.
Thank you so much.